Hello there. When it comes to creating a layout for our web page, Flexbox is one of the most important and famous tools that every developer uses in their projects. In this video, we will learn Flexbox from scratch and we will dig into different parts of Flexbox, starting with what is Flexbox and how it works by creating a simple layout in this video. But before that, let us first talk about what is a layout and what were the layout methods and tools developers used before Flexbox was introduced. So, a layout is a pattern or a framework which defines a website structure. It has a role of structuring the website's information for both the user as well as the website's owner. So, a layout basically manages and organizes the content on our web page, and it is one of the most important feature which makes a website stand out from the other websites. Now, before Flexbox was introduced, the only reliable cross browser compatible tools that developers used were floats, tables, and positioning. These are fine and they work, but sometimes they are rather limiting and frustrating. When we talk about floats, the main purpose behind floats was to wrapping text around images. And what this float property does is it places the element to the right or to the left of its container and allowing the text or any other inline element to wrap around it. It also removes the element from the normal flow of the page. Similarly, with tables, they are rather problematic and complex. We have to provide cell widths, margins, paddings, background colors in the HTML markup itself. And in case we are creating advanced layouts, there is nesting in our HTML, and it makes very difficult to troubleshoot our code. One missing tag or one extra tag, and a whole website layout could break. There are many other situations like vertically centering our child elements inside the parent container or making all the child elements of a container attain same widths and heights regardless of the available space in the container. It is quite difficult and impossible to overcome such situations with these tools. And these tools are not really ideal for creating responsive layouts too. So life was hell for developers at that time. They had to write chunky pieces of code to create a simple layout for a web page. But soon Flexbox was introduced and it made all these layout methods obsolete. Now let's see what Flexbox is and how it made layout creation for the web so easier. Flexbox stands for Flexible Box Module, which is a CSS module, and it is a flexible way to lay out items or elements in one dimension, which is either a row or a column. The main idea behind Flexbox is to give the container element the ability to control or alter its child element's width and height according to the available space inside the container. So, with any change in our parent container size, the child elements respond according to the available space provided to them, hence creating a flexible layout. Flexbox is also used to rearrange the order of items or elements on our web page without making any changes on our source HTML file. We are going to use all these features of Flexbox when we will create a Flexbox layout from scratch further in this video. But before that, let us first understand some basic terms and concepts so that we can start creating layouts with Flexbox. So the first term which we are going to discuss is Flex container. So Flex container is basically a parent container which contains Flex item inside it, and Flex items are the child elements whose behavior is controlled by the Flex container itself. So by behavior, we mean that how are they going to respond according to the available space inside the container. Now to use all the properties defined by Flexbox module, we have to first understand how to create a Flex container. To create a Flex container, we have to set the display property of the container element to Flex. This will automatically convert all the items inside container to Flex items, and it is also going to align these items in a single row. But why? This is because of the another Flexbox property, which is Flex direction. So as soon as a Flex container is created, the Flex direction property is by default set to row. So all the elements inside the container are going to be aligned in a single row. And when Flex direction is set to column, all the elements or Flex items inside container are going to be aligned in a single column. Now comes one of the most important concepts based on which the whole Flexbox module works. This is the main axis and the cross axis. So when a flex container is created, it is provided with these two axes, the main axis and the cross axis. And the orientation of these axes depends upon the values given to the flex direction property. So if flex direction is set to row, the main axis is going to run horizontally and the cross axis is going to run vertically. And when flex direction is set to column, the main axis is going to run vertically and the cross axis is going to run horizontally. These axes play an important role for defining the alignment and spacing between flex items inside a container. But for now, we have to just understand the orientation of these axes based on the flex direction property. We will understand its working later in this video. So to remember the orientation of these axes easily, just keep in mind that the main axis always follows the direction of flex items inside container. So if the flex items are aligned in a single row, the main axis is going to run horizontally, and if the flex items are aligned in a single column, the main axis is going to run vertically. And the cross axis in every case is going to be perpendicular to the main axis. Now let's take a simple example to understand the basic fundamentals and features of Flexbox that we have discussed till now. So in this example, we have 4 items, each having different background colors so that we can differentiate between them easily. In the HTML, we have a div with class container, and this container contains these 4 items, and these items have a common class name item and another class to give them different background colors. Similarly, in the CSS, I have given full width and height to the container element and some basic styling to each and every item. So our first step is to create a flex container. So to create a flex container, we have to set the display property of the container element to flex. So inside a container class, I'm going to set the display property to flex. And as soon as I save it, all these items will be converted into flex items and they will be aligned in a single row. Now if I set the flex direction property to row, there is no change here because by default flex direction is set to row as soon as the flex container is created. Now if I set this to column, now all these items are aligned in a single column. Flex direction also accepts 2 more values, which is column reverse and row reverse. So in this case, the items start from opposite direction and these items are displayed in reverse order. Similarly, in row reverse, starting from opposite direction and displaying all the items in reverse order. So for now, let's keep it row. Earlier in this video, we saw that flex containers control the behavior of flex items. So in this case, if I decrease the size of a container, you will observe that the flex items will try to shrink themselves as much as possible, but at some point they'll stop responding to it. So we can control this behavior of flex items through a property called FlexWrap. So FlexWrap basically is used to define whether to make these flex items stick in a single line or to make them flow in multiple lines. So by default it is set to no wrap. So if I decrease the size of a container, they'll just shrink as much as possible and at some point they'll stop responding. But when I set this to wrap and I decrease the size of a container, so you'll see that the flex items will flow to multiple lines. So this property is very useful for creating responsive layouts. It also accepts wrap reverse. So it basically starts from opposite direction and wraps the elements in upward direction. So if I decrease this, so it's now wrapping in upward direction here. Let's keep it wrapped. Now Flexbox also provides some shorthand techniques to write CSS much faster. So one such shorthand property is FlexFlow. So in FlexFlow property, we define both the flex direction as well as FlexWrap property at the same time. So we just write here row and wrap, and we can remove these 2 lines here. So they are aligned in a single row, and if I decrease the size of a container, it's going to flow into multiple lines. So such techniques are very useful to write CSS much faster, and they are very easier to understand as well. There are many other Flexbox properties that we have to explore, and we will be exploring those Flexbox properties by creating our layout with Flexbox from scratch. Now it's time to build our layout, and the layout that we are going to create here looks like this. So before we start creating our layout, there are some things that I need to mention here. So first is that we are not going to make this layout responsive, because responsive web design is another deep topic which requires more time. So we will be concentrating on that topic in future videos. But for now, let us focus on creating flexible layouts for desktop screen sizes only. Secondly, other than CSS Flexbox, there is another layout tool called CSS Grid, which is more powerful and effective than CSS Flexbox. CSS Grid is a two-dimensional layout tool and is preferred for creating complex and large-scale layouts, whereas Flexbox is a one-dimensional layout tool and is preferred for creating small-scale and simple layouts. So in this video, we'll be creating a simple layout, and Flexbox will work perfectly fine here. So without wasting any time, let us get started. So as we can see in this image, we are going to first create a main container which is going to contain all these blocks and containers, sub-containers inside it. So let us create our main container here, and inside this main container we have our, for the first thing that we have is our header block. So let's create a header. Now let us first style our main container and header. So main container, and let's give it a width of 100% and padding of 10 pixels from all the sides. As you can see in this image, there's some space, there's some padding from all the sides we provided to the container. And let's center this container, so margin auto. Now let us come to the header. So we'll quickly style this header. So let's align the text to center and increase the font size to 2.4 rem and set the color to white and the background color. So I have already initialized all the background colors that we are going to use inside CSS variables, so that we can reuse those variables time and time again in our CSS code. So here I'm going to use header. I've already defined header variable with this color here. Okay, so let's see now. So it's quite, the height is not quite perfect here, so let us add some padding of 15 pixels top to bottom and 0 pixels padding from left to right. So now it's perfectly matching with the header here. Okay, and let us give a border radius too of 5 pixels. Okay, now it's perfectly matching. Now comes the most important part of our layout, which is the main body content here. So we are going to create a content div which is going to have two flex items. So the first flex item is going to be the vertical box here, and the second flex item is going to be a container which is going to contain these two sub containers, the horizontal box and this card container. So first let us create our content div. So inside our main container, content, and inside a content div we are going to have two items, which is the vertical box. Let us give it a name of aside box, and another item which is main box. Let us give it a name of main box, which is going to store the horizontal box and the card container. So let us first style our content here. So content. So the content is a flex container which is having two flex items, the vertical box and the container having these two sub containers. So these items are aligned in a single row here, as we can see. So we have to set the display property to flex and flex direction to row. Let us also set the height to 550 pixels and width of 100%, and also give it a margin of 10 pixels from top to bottom and 0 from left to right. Okay, now let us first style our vertical box here. So let us select the box first, so a side box, and in this image, as we can see, it is occupying the full 100% width and 15%, sorry, 100% height and 15% width here. So height is set to 100% and width is 15%, and the rest 85% is occupied by the container which is containing these two horizontal and card container. So height is 100%, width is 15%, and background is orange. Okay, so let us also give it a border radius of 5 pixels. So now let us see. So we have a vertical box ready. So now let us add our items inside it and align themselves. So first, to align those items inside this, we have to convert this vertical box into a flex container. So we'll just set the display property to flex, and since all these items inside here is aligned in a single column, so we'll set the flex direction to column. And let us first add the items in our HTML. So inside our aside box, div item 1, and let's give them a content inside them. Okay, so now we have and successfully inserted our items inside our vertical box. Now let's style these items first. So let me select all these items all together here, and so let us increase the font size to 1.4 rem and align the text to center. Give some padding of 45 pixels and margin of 3 pixels from top to bottom and 0 pixels from left to right. And let us also give a background color of item. Okay, so now it looks quite familiar with here, but still not perfect. So for that, we have to align and provide and define the spacing between these items. So we have discussed earlier in this video that the main axis and cross axis are used to define the spacing and alignment inside Flex container. So Flexbox provides us with two Flex properties, which are justify content and align items. So justify content is the property which is used to define alignment as well as spacing between the items along the main axis, while in case of align items define the alignment between flex items along the cross axis. So in this case, the flex direction is set to column. So the main axis is going to run vertically and cross axis is going to run horizontally inside this vertical box. So if I set the justify content property and to center, then we can see that they are vertically centered here, because justify content defines spacing and alignment across main axis, and main axis is vertical here. Similarly, justify content accepts many other values such as space around. So in case of space around, the spacing between the items is not equal to the spacing between the item and the container boundary. And in case of space evenly, the spacing between items is equal to the spacing between the items and the container boundary. We can observe this here. And another which it accepts is space between. In case of space between, it maximizes the space between the flex items. So here we are going to set it to space evenly. And now we also want to align them center horizontally. As we can see in this image, they are aligned horizontally centered too. So for that, for horizontally, we are going to use align items here, because the cross axis is running horizontally and the main axis is running vertically. So align items are used to define alignment across cross axis. So align items, and if we set this to center, so you can see how all the items are aligned centered horizontally and spaced evenly vertically. Let us give these items some border radius too, and let us say 5 pixels. Okay, now we are going to explore more values that these justify content and align items are going to accept. So further in this layout, that when we will code further, so we'll get to know more values that these properties accept. So now our vertical box is ready, and let's move on to our next flex item, which is going to store these two sub containers here, the horizontal box and the card container. So first, let's style our main box, and then we'll add these horizontal box and card container inside it. So first, let's select the main box here, and let's give it a height of 100%. and it's going to occupy the full height of our content div, and width of 85%, and rest 15% is occupied by the vertical box. And also let's give it a margin of 10 pixels from the left, so we can have some little spacing between the vertical container and the main box. So 10 pixels. Okay, now inside our main box we can see that these two containers are aligned in a single column. So we'll set the display property of our main box to flex, and then we'll set the flex direction to column. So display flex, and flex direction is set to column. Okay, so now let's first add the horizontal box and card container in our HTML, and then we'll style them. So let's go to our HTML. So inside our main box we have one horizontal box and another sub container, which is a card container. And inside our horizontal box we have three items here, so let's add these two. So let's copy these and we'll make changes inside them. And item 4, 5 and 6. Alright, so we have our horizontal box and the items inside it and a card container. So let us first style our horizontal box, and then we'll style the items inside it, and then we will define the spacing and alignment between these items. So let's select our horizontal box here. So it has a background color of orange, and its width is 100%, and height is 40%, and rest 60% is occupied by the card container here. And let us also give it a border radius of 5 pixels. Alright, so now we can also see in this image is that the items are aligned in a single row here. So we'll set the display property to flex, and by default flex direction is set to row, so we don't have to mention it here. So let's set the display property to flex here. Okay, so now let's style our items inside the horizontal box. So for that, let's copy these, and then we'll make changes inside this classes. So 6, 5, 4. Alright, so we'll set the font size. Okay, text center, padding we'll change this to 90 pixels from left and right, and margin, instead of setting margin from top to bottom, we'll set margin between left and right. So it's going to be like this, and rest is fine. Okay, so now if we save it and let's see, so we have our items aligned in a single row, and our horizontal box is also ready, but we have to define the spacing and the alignment between these items here. So for that we have justify content and align items properties, as we discussed earlier in this vertical box section. So here our items are aligned in a single row. So based on a flex direction, the main axis is going to run horizontally, and cross axis is going to run vertically. So if I set here justify content, so all the properties that I apply here inside justify content is going to be applied along the main axis. So justify content, if I set it to center here, so all these items are aligned in the center. But inside this container in our image, we see that all the items have spaced evenly. So for that, instead of center, we'll set it to space evenly. And we can also see here that they are centered vertically. For that, we'll use align items, and we'll set this to center. So our items are also ready here. So our horizontal box is ready. Now let's come to our card container. So first we'll add the cards inside it in our HTML. So let's add the cards. So card 1, and let's set the content. And let's copy this. Alright, and let's change the classes and the content too. Okay, so we have added our cards in the HTML markup. So now first let's style our card container and then we'll style our individual cards here. So let's select the card container here and let's give it a height of 60% because earlier we have set the height of horizontal box to 40% and its width is going to be 100%. And background color, there's no background color here, so just going to contain these flex items, which is cards. So let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Instead of left, we'll set it to top. Alright, now also in this image we can see that all the cards are aligned in a single row. So we'll set the display property to flex and the flex direction is by default set to row. So let's set the display property to flex here. And alright, so we have our card container style here. So now let's style our individual cards here. So card 1, card 2, card 3, and these cards have a background color of like similar to cyan. So I've already saved this background color here, so let's check its name. So okay, it's saved by card here only. Okay, so background color is set to card and let's give it a padding of 100 pixels from top to bottom and 0 pixels from left to right. And let's save it and let's see what is the current condition here. So we can see all the cards are aligned in a single row and we are given a padding of 100 pixels here. Now also let us set the text align property to center. So some common flex item properties that we can use are flex grow, flex shrink, order, and align self. Keep in mind that these flex items properties are applied on individual flex items inside container. So for styling these cards, we are going to use flex grow property. So flex grow property is used to increase the size of flex items relative to the size of another flex items inside container. So to understand the working of flex grow, let us directly apply it here. So by default, flex grow is set to 0 and negative numbers are considered invalid here. So let's select our cards individually and define the flex grow property inside them. So card 1 and flex grow, it is by default set to 0. Let's also define this property for other cards here. Alright, now if I save this, there's no change here because now it is obeying the original width that CSS has applied here. Now to increase the size of these cards, we are going to manipulate the values of our flex grow property. So if I set this to 1, 2, and 3, and let me also give some margin between them so we can differentiate between them easily. Okay. So now we can see here that card 3 is 3 times the size of card 1 and it is 2 times the size of card 2. So if I manipulate these values here, let's say 4. So now you can see that card 3 is 4 times the size of card 1 and I have set the value of flex grow to 2 for card 2. So card 2 is twice the size of card 1. I can also give equal values here. So if I set card 2 and card 3 to 2, so now card 2 and card 3 will have same size and card 1 is going to be half of this card 2 and card 3 here because it is 1 here for card 1. And there's another property called flex shrink which works similarly to flex grow, but the difference here is that instead of increasing the size of flex items, it decreases the size of flex items related to other items present in container. Now the next property that we are going to discuss is order. So order property is used to rearrange the items inside container. So for that we'll set the order property for each card here and by default it is set to 0. So in this case the arrangement is according to the HTML document that we have here written. So let's set the order property here to 0 for every card. Alright, so now it's following the original arrangement inside our HTML. So now to change the rearrangement between these cards, we'll just manipulate these values. So if I set this card 3 to 1, so now you can also see here there's no change here. But if I set card 2 order to 2, now you can see here that card 3 is at the second position and card 2 is at the third position. Now if I set the first card to, let's say, 5, now we observe that card 1 is at the last position, card 3 is at the first position, and card 2 is at the second position. So these values also works relative to each other, because the order of card 1 is the highest, so it is at the last position, and order of the third card is the lowest, so it is at the first position. Similarly, we can also give negative values. So with as we give more and more negative values here, it is going to be at the first place itself. So here, if I set the order for card 1 to -6, so it is at the first position. Now if I set the order for card 2 at -10, so now card 2 is at the first position, card 1 is at the second, and card 3, which has a positive value, is set to third position. So according to our image, we have our original order here, so we don't need to manipulate our rearrangement. So let's remove these orders. Okay, we can also see here that the card 2 is twice the size of card 1 and card 3. So let's set the FlexGroup for card 2 to 2. So it's already set here. And for card 3 and card 1, it will be set to 1. Okay, so now it's fine. Let us also increase the font size here. So font size, let's say 2 rem. Alright, now another property that we have for flex items are align self. So align self is used to align individual flex items inside container. So we can align them in 3 ways, either at the starting position, at the ending position, or at center. So if I manipulate the alignment of these individual items here inside horizontal box, so let's select our item here, so item 4, and let's set the align self property to flex start, and for item 6, let's set the align self property to flex end. So now I'll see that the item 4 is at the top position, item 5, which is set at the center position because of the align items property that we have applied on it earlier, and item 6 is at the at the end position because we have set the align self property to flex end here. So we can use align self property to align each flex items inside container. So for now, let's remove this. Okay, so the next thing that we have in our layout is the footer element. So it is basically a block element. So let's quickly style it. First, let us create this footer here. So outside of our content div, we will have a div class footer and content footer. Now let's quickly style it. So footer, it has a background color of variable header, and header variable is set to pink, I think. Yeah, it is set to pink. Okay, cool. Now let's set the color to white and text align to center. Let us also increase the font size to 2.4 rem, and we can also observe here that the footer has a larger padding as compared to the header element. So let's set the padding for this footer element to, let's say, 55 pixels top to bottom and 0 for left to right, and also give it a border radius of 5 pixels. So our layout is finally ready. So in this video, we have understood what Flexbox is and how it works and how powerful it is for creating simple and small scale layouts. Also, you can, if you want to dig deeper and explore more concepts of Flexbox, you can refer many documentations available on the web like MDN Docs and CSS Tricks. They provide a huge guide for this CSS Flexbox module. You can also practice by creating many layouts with Flexbox, and also explore many shorthand tricks. So keep practicing. So until we meet again, keep coding. Bye-bye.
Your dream tech career at a top product company is just a step away. Visit ProGrad.org, check out our latest tech programs, and kickstart your dream career in tech.